cru on premier cru is just unique. And for me, it's amazing to have the ability to vinificate so many different premier cru, grand cru, from Côte de Nuit, Côte de Beaune. It's magic. And you could understand very well the difference come from the soil, the microclimate, and it's huge. And to be some different style, and that it's magic for me. Yeah.
So Bouchard Père et Fils has 130 hectares of an estate, a lot in Premier and Grand Cru, is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. We have 12 hectares of Grand Cru, 74 hectares of Premier Cru, but that it's not so important. The most important is the collection. We have le Montrachet, les Chevaliers Montrachet, les Cortons Charlemagne, les Bonnemar, les Clos Vougeot, les Chambertin. Les vignes de l'Enfant Jésus, les Volnay-Cailleret, les Genevrières, les Perrières. It's certainly all his name is the most beautiful wine from Côte d'Or, and to see the difference between each terroir it's huge. And it's unique because a normal size in Burgundy it's 8 hectares for a family, but Bouchard it's 130 hectares. And that it's unique, and it's all in is our property, and that it's just unique.
And so yeah, I'm sure you have a team that is working with you to manage all of those vineyards and in the cellar. So how many people do you work with?
We have a large team in the vineyard. The most important is in the vineyard with 40 people in the vineyard. And 15 people in the winery, and but after that we employed also some people to help us during the green period, today to the harvest, and also during the harvest. And during the harvest, for example, we employed 200 people to pick the grapes and to help us, and 80 people for the winery to select the grapes and to help the team for the vinification.
And I believe some of the tâcherons, the people working in the vineyards, are spending pretty much their life taking care of like the same plots, the same parcels. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. During all his life, le tâcheron, le vigneron tâcheron, will work only the same place. We select with him a specific place, a specific plot. For example, for un tâcheron for la vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, another for le Clos de la Mousse, another for the Montrachet. And these guys will work all his life just this plot, and his knowledge it's great because he know each vine per vine. He has the knowledge when he prune it, when for the green period, and he know each square meter, and so it's very interesting for us.
I'm sure it comes handy when they have to deal with specific weather conditions, climate conditions. So I would suggest we jump in the 2019 vintage. Can you tell us what were the growing conditions and what were your biggest challenges and how you overcame them?
19 was a very great vintage for us in Burgundy. Firstly, the main fact was for me, it was the winter was not cold, but more hot, but very dry. The main fact is the dryness during the winter, and we do not have the rain during the winter, and that explains a lot of things after. And the spring arrived more sooner than usual. And finally, 19 was a hot year, a little less than 18, but it was very dry. But the condition during the flowering period was important. It was not so hot. We had just some rain during the flowering period. The flowering period appeared the 4 to the 10 June. And unfortunately, there is some coulure, flowering absorption, and we lost a part of the yield. That explains why 19 was there is a few quantity for this vintage. After that, the spring and the rest of the spring and the summer was very hot, very dry. And that's permit to reach very high maturity with a perfect condition, with no problem with mildew or oidium. It all was very good. The grape was so beautiful.
And there was a lot of there was a lack of water resulting from the heat wave, right?
No, there is some period with hydric stress, but it was not so stressful as the 20 vintage. 19 was no, it was good, and but the main fact also it's we observe a lot of milrandage. And the milrandage, it's come from because we have a cold period during April, and after that, the wet period during the flowering period. And that's why there is so much milrandage for the Pinot Noir, but more for the Chardonnay.
So I have a picture to show our audience actually what does the milrandage looks like, which is really like a very
milrandage is a very few a small berry, but it's very interesting for the quality because with the milrandage you have a concentration of acidity and sucrosity, and also with aromatic, very interesting aromatic taste. And alors 19, finally it was a very hot vintage, but the balance of the wine, it's incredible. And you have a high maturity with a high alcohol level between 13.5 to 14.5 natural degree, but also with high acidity come from the milrandage, and the balance is very, very beautiful. And if we speak about the red wine, for me, 19, it's between 15 and 17. You have the beautiful color of 15 with a very dense wine. It's a very round tannin, very unapproachable vintage. And also the aromatic and the silky tannin of 17. And for me, it's honestly, I think 19 for the red wine in Burgundy, it's one of the greatest vintage since a very long time. When I taste the wine on the barrel, I have the same emotions as we open a very old bottle from the cellar, and you remember me the 1949 for the red wine. And I think 19 will be one of the greatest vintage we had the last 20 years.
So another fantastic vintage aging in 9, I understand.
Yeah. And for the white, it's I think the white was a little more challenging because it was a hotter and a very dry year with concentration. And but after that, we adapt. We pick more earlier to keep the freshness and the acidity. And after we adapt the vinification. And finally, the white, I'm very confident today because it's, I think the style, it's very close to 15. It's a round, rich, it's a true Burgundy wine with a very appealing, with a lot of taste, but like in 15, but with more acidity. It's not 14, but you have the crispy and the zest of the 14 in the mouth.
So can you tell us also, I mean, the maturing and the aging time, our audience obviously realizes that we're releasing our vintage 2019 later. You actually usually come in the market in the United States in March to present the new wines, but this time, of course, you couldn't come, but we are releasing later. Can you tell us about the aging and why?
Yeah, but for me, the 19 was so beautiful, and I think it was important to take time, and I would like to have a little more longer aging in barrel, and to rack at the last moment. And globally, the red wine I racking first for the first time the red wine between February to March, and I bottled it. I finished the bottling for the red wine in May. The beginning of May, And for the white, as I said, it was a little more challenging and specific for this vintage. You need more time because at the beginning the white was very opulent, rich, a little more bigger for me. And during the maturation, during the élevage in barrel, after July, the wine changed a little. It became more focused, the acidity increased, the taste, the terroir increased also, the definition was better. And I think this vintage need more time. That's why I decided to racking the white only after February and March. And we're working with a lot of lees. We take time in tank to settle the lees. And no, I not finished to the bottling the white. Les grands crus, for example, le Montrachet, les Corton Charlemagne, la Cabotte, continue to aging in a big foudre, big barrel.
Good. Okay. So what Frédéric is not, sorry, I have a question. So what would be the average? I know we can, in production, we've been talking about how small the vintage has been, obviously varies terroir by terroir, but how much would you say in general is off in terms of production?
For the yield, for the red wine, it's between 25 to 28 hectoliter per hectare, and for the white, it's the same thing. In fact, it was not for the Chardonnay, the stress was come from the flavoring absorption during the Lafleur. And for the red, it's because just during the vendange, there is a lot of north wind, and in this time there is no water on the ground, and there is a concentration on the berries. That's why globally the yield is low. But
what would be
also that helps us for the concentration.
So in terms of percentage, what would be the cut, or what would be the regular hectoliter per hectare?
Normally it's more close to 40, 45 hectoliter per hectare.
So we would be, did you say 50%? No, not quite 50%, but like maybe 30 to 40% down. Okay. Well, so 2019, a fantastic, excellent years. Frédéric is certainly like too modest and too humble to tell you how talented he is. So I will, and I also want to point out we have some of the William Kelly from the Wine Advocates. Frédéric has once again excelled himself in 2019, and you mentioned how you've been wanting to push the precision and the elegance and the finesse of the wines, and it's good to see it acknowledged. He writes as well. So Wine Advocate William Kelly, this is another terrific vintage at Bouchard Père & Fils. Helen Meadows from Burgund Hound listed Bouchard as one of the magnificent 7 Côte de Bonne domain for the year, and certainly an estate to watch. So we could, as mentioned by Frédéric, we have quite a collection, a remarkable collection, but we had to pick the favorite children to give you a sense of the vintage. So we've selected 6 wines. Each of them has a very special meaning to the house, and I'm very excited to start with the Bonne Premier Cru Clos de la Mousse, which is iconic for the house because this is a monopole, and it's not. Thank you, Frédéric. It's a monopole since 1872, and it took the Bouchard family over 30 years to assemble that monopole, buying and purchasing parcel by parcel. And it's a lesser known wine. So I want you to take us through. I have a little picture to show. It's Clos, as I'm sure most of you know, is a walled vineyard in Burgundy, and you can see here, an example of the walled vineyard. So Frédéric, what can you tell us about the Clos de la Mousse? What kind of terroir it is, and what is the 19 looking like?
Alors, le Clos de la Mousse, for me, it's one of my favorite terroirs in the Bouchard estate, and in fact, it's a very old terroir. We know the Clos de la Mousse since the 12th century. It's unique. You have 800 years of history of vine growing just in this place with his own name, Clos de la Mousse. The names come from a Latin name, Monticellus. It's like high terraces. And the soil, it's very different of the other Beaune Premier Cru because it's rich in clay, very dense clay, with a 2 meter of profundeus. And it's important because it's a cold place, and the vineyard here never suffer of the drought, and mainly with the global warming, and that's permit to reach a high maturity without hydric stress. And every year with the Clos de la Mousse, you have a very beautiful texture, a beautiful fruit, and I love his wine because. The nose, it's fresh, and you have the raspberry and the blueberry. It's a very round tannin. It's a really an appealing wine with a lot of pleasure today and you could keep it during a very long period. The aging potential, it's great. But I think it's more, yes, truly a pleasure wine. And the quality of the tannin is very beautiful.
I believe that the Clos de la Mousse is the first parcel that you started to farm as with organic practices.
Yes, but globally in the history of Bouchard, it's important, the Clos de la Mousse, because during the 19th century, just after the phylloxera crisis, the Bouchard started to replant. And we tried the first les greffés in the Clos de la Mousse, and we continue to try different method with the Clos de la Mousse because we have a 4 hectares and there is a stone wall all around, and we could try different method. We could try to, and we start with the organic method 10 years ago. And now we continue to practice this method. We increase in all the estate, and the last years we use on 50 hectares organic method, and we decided to use it for all the estate, and with a certification for 2024.
So the 130 hectares of Bouchard Père et Fils will be certified organic with the vintage 2023, right?
2024.
The vintage 2024.
Yeah.
2024. Wow.
We will see. It's not the most important for us. It's not to have the certification. The most important it's the philosophy. The philosophy. We are a vine grower, and we depend of the Mother Nature, and it's important for us to protect environment, nature, and also we have the we would like to transmit a beautiful vineyard for the next generation. The story of Bouchard, it's 300 years, and the Henriot family wants to transmit a beautiful vineyard for the future. That was the most important for us.
And so organic farming and environmentally friendly conscious
yes.
practices is the key. So can we move on to the next Beaune Premier Cru? Although Premier Cru, he would certainly deserve, you know, probably a Grand Cru appellation. That one is Bouchard is very famous for. You seeing the bottle, I want to show you the beautiful terroir, which is, so it's not technically a monopole, Bouchard, Bonne Grève, Vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, because it's within the appellation Bonne Grève. But the Vigne de l'Enfant Jésus is a climat, is a designation that's solely the property of Bouchard, right?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, the appellation is Beaune-Grève. In Beaune-Grève, you have 32 hectares in totally, but La Vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, it's only 4 hectares in the middle of the Beaune-Grève, just in the middle of the slope. It's the best place of the appellation. And a lot of people, journalists or English people, said it's the filet mignon of the Beaune-Grève. Because it's a very perfect location at the middle of the slope, and the soil it's more gravelly soil. It's easy to cultivate the soil, and mainly after a rain. It's a sunny place. The maturity arrive more earlier in this place, and that's permit to reach very high maturity. But for me, the most important for the Vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, you have the story, but also you have the definition of the wine. And the definition, for me, it's just unique. And when you vinificate La Vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, we try to reach a specific nose, and a nose of violet, with fresh leather. And also a very specific texture of tannin. It's very silky, very round, and in the mouth, it's a very long wine with a very high potential for aging. We had some bottle of the 19th century in the cellar, and we taste some very old wine of the baby Jesus, and it's just incredible, because if you taste a new wine or a very old, after some minutes, you recognize the style of the baby Jesus. It's just unique.
Question about the whole clusters. I mean, how much did you use in 2019 in general? I believe that it was a higher proportion. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, because we adapt the style of the vinification for 19, because the maturity was there, the crop was very low, and when I tasted the berry in the vineyard just before the harvest, the skin was very thick with a beautiful quality of tannin, a lot of color, but also the seed was very brown, with a beautiful quality of tannin, with some note of coffee and mocha. It was great. There is some dried berries, but we select it, we eliminate that because it's important for us to express the terroir, to express also the freshness. I want to avoid over maturity. But for this vintage, we increase also the percentage of a whole cluster. For the Côte de Beaune, it's between 25 to 40%. On Côte de Nuit, it's more 50%. And that's permit to recover some more freshness, with more floral and delicacy. And also to have a long maceration. And during the 12, 15 days, but during all the maceration, we never use a racking over. We do not punch the cap, just an effusion. It's a very delicate extraction to express this vintage.
So that's in general also the limited racking and basically yes. No punching the cap. Exactly. That was the rule for the year.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. How about we move on to the next wine, which has another very special meaning for the house, because so it's Volnay-les-Cailleraie, also known as Ancienne Cuvée Carnot, purchased yes. by the Bouchard family in 1775, as you mentioned earlier. And it's very important because this marked the beginning of Bouchard Père et Fils as an estate that made the house the beginning of made them a vine grower. So how was 2019 for Volnay-les-Cailleraie?
Alors, Volnay, it's a very important place for the Bouchard family, because we have a lot of different terroirs in Volnay, with les Volnay, les Clos des Chênes, les Volnay, les Frémiers, les Pitures, les Chevrets, les Volnay, les Taillepieds. But les Volnay-les-Cailleraie, it's the hearth of the Bouchard estate. It's the first plot that the Bouchard family purchased in 1775, and in totally we have 3 hectares, 0.7, and it's a very beautiful place, just in the middle of the slope. On Les Cailleraie, the name means les chailles, and les chailles in French, it's a soil rich in limestone, a lot of white stone and rocky soil. It's poor, that's why the yield is naturally low. And it's a very beautiful place. You have just 40, 60 centimeters of red clay, and after it's a bedrock of limestone, very hard. And you just be careful of the over maturity. That's why I spend a lot of time in this place. Every day I go in Les Volnay-les-Cailleraie to see the evolution and to choose the good date for the harvest. And generally, we started the harvest on the estate Bouchard with Les Volnay-les-Cailleraie because it's a very sunny place. And in 19, I started the 11th September. And Les Cailleraie, the wine is it's also unique because it's certainly the most delicate, the most soft tannin from the Volnay area. And in Volnay, you said if you don't have a Volnay-les-Cailleraie, you don't know what is a Volnay, because the definition is just unique.
Sure. Thank you. It's my mouth watering, I have to say, wine watering. The next wine is we're going to the Grand Cru. We're staying in the Côte de Beaune. As mentioned by Frédéric, the house has a collection of wines and parcels in the Côte de Nuit as well. But Le Corton is so special. This is Le Grand Cru, the Grand Cru in Beaune. And Bouchard has a very strong position. I have a little map I want to share for Frédéric to let us know what the specificity of this popular Premier Cru is. A Grand Cru, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yes, Le Corton on the area for Bouchard, we have in totally a little less than 4 hectares. But the most important is the situation on the hillock. And as you can see, it's east facing. That is very important. And we are at the top of the hillock. It's 280 meters of altitude. And that is very important. And just in this place, the soil is really different because you have 50, 80 centimeters of red clay, very rich in iron, and that gives the powerful of the wine for Le Corton. But after that, it's a bedrock of rocky soil, la pierre de Corton. It's very difficult for the vineyard, for the vine to grow in this place. But it's unique. Only in this place you have this proportion of limestone, and that gives a lot of elegance. Because classically, people say the red wine from Corton area, it's a very massive and masculine wine, but not in this place because of the proportion of limestone. And generally, Le Corton Bouchard, it's more elegant. I love the nose of Le Corton. I increase year after year the proportion of whole cluster, and I think honestly 19 of Corton, it's my best Corton I ever made. I love the nose. It's between the roses and peony. It's a very beautiful blueberry and strawberry note, and it's very round in the mouth, and the longer it's just great. I love this wine.
How much time do you, I know it's always a difficult question, how much time would you give it? What's the aging potential?
19, honestly, I think it's very great vintage, and you could it's a great vintage. You could take pleasure now immediately, or if you want to, if you have the good cellar, you could wait minimum for a Corton, it's 10 years. It's great. But after that, I'm sure on Bouchard also we do not release for the market all the production. We keep a large part because we know 19 it's a great vintage for the future. And as you know, it's a tradition for us. We keep a part of the production for the collection, for the cellar, and we will age in the to the chateau, and for the future, for the next generation.
Nice, fantastic. So we're going to stay with the Côte de Beaune, but we'll go to whites, and I'm very excited to be talking about the next wine, which is one of my favorites in the Bouchard portfolio. It's what I call the twin monopole, the monopole twin. This is the other monopole of Bouchard, which is remarkable to have two. And it's the Beaune Premier Cru de Clos Saint-Landry. I want to, before let you talk about it, I want to share the map and show you like right away how very special that wine is, because that's that one parcel of Chardonnay in an ocean, or at least in a very big Pinot Noir territory. So how come there is Chardonnay there, and what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, alors le Clos Saint-Landry, in fact, it's the first trace of white varieties. It's in Beaune. It's come from the Clos Saint-Landry, and we know with the archive from between the 13th century, the Clos Saint-Landry was always planted with white with the Chardonnay, and it was planted by the Cistercian monk, and certainly his name was Thiers Landry. It was the Cistercian monk who cultivated this plot. That's why he put his name. And the Clos Saint-Landry, if you analyze the soil, it's unique because it's white marl and yellow marl, and all around it's more red clay. On red clay, it's better for Pinot Noir, but on white and yellow marl, it's better for the Chardonnay. And the Cistercian monk have the ability, the knowledge to choose the good place for Chardonnay or Pinot Noir. And le Saint-Landry, alors it's a flat land, rich in marl, and it's a sunny place also. The maturity arrive early, and that's why generally I started the harvest in Clos Saint-Landry in Beaune to keep the freshness and the acidity. And after that, the specificity of le Clos Saint-Landry, it's for me, it's the dry fruit, apricot, sometimes a specific nose of exotic note with has the l'ananas and pineapple. Yes, thank you. And also it's round. Beaune in general, it's generous. It's a little more generous than Chassagne or Puligny, but with a very beautiful delicacy and acidity in the finish. On 19 was a little more challenging to have the good balance. That's why we started the harvest with the white to keep the acidity, and also we adapt the style of the vinification with a very short fermentation in tank with a cold temperature, 16, 17 degrees maximum. And after, just at the end of alcoholic fermentation, when I was sure the alcoholic fermentation was finished, we're working with a lot of lees, and we put it in barrel during almost 16, 18 months.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, tour of Clos Saint-Landry. And so I'm moving on to the next and last stop in Bouchard. We travel, from the Côte de Beaune in the back to Meursault Genévrières. So before talking about specifically about this Premier Cru, I just want to take a moment to share that after taking over the torch from the Bouchard family in 1995, the Henriot also went to Meursault, and there was an opportunity with the estate Hôpitaux-Mignon, which allowed Bouchard Père et Fils to extend their collection of Meursault. I mean, Genevrières was actually the first Meursault purchased by the family and then extended after the Henriot took over. The long story short, in my point is Bouchard has a very strong position in Meursault that we don't always communicate or is recognized. I mean, 20 hectares, which is about over like 50 acres. We have 6 premiers crus and villages. I mean, the Meursault domain and the Meursault-les-Clous, of course. And it was difficult to pick one, but Genevrières again is the first one that was purchased by the family. So how was 19 for this specific bottle?
Pour le terroir des Meursault Genevrières, we are lucky because in fact it's 2 plots. The first plot, it's in the hearth of the Meursault Genevrières du Dessus. It's a steep slope. The soil is very brown, rich, and in this part, the wine is very large, generous. It's a true Genevrière with a lot of. It's more opulent, more rich, and we are lucky because we have also a upper part. For 1 hectare, it's more high in altitude. The soil is very different. It's more it's a white stone, and it gives more acidity, more freshness. And we pick a little more later because the maturity arrives more later in this place. And after aging in barrel, we blend together to have the cuvée Meursault Genevrières. And that's permit to us to have a very well-balanced Meursault Genevrières, not too rich, but with more freshness, more delicacy and acidity in the finish. And I think for the 19, it will be a very, very beautiful Meursault Genevrières because it's really appealing. The nose, it's great. It's an exposure of dried fruit and nutty note and almond. And after that, you have in the mouth, you have the citrus and the zest of the citrus in the finish with a creamy sensation. It's a very beautiful Genevrière in 19.
We're getting at time, so I want to thank you, Frédéric, and for taking the time to walk us through 2019. I want to open up, take a few minutes just to see questions. So feel free to send your questions. I already have a couple, but before we get there, I just want to point out that we have that digital booklet where you can find like all of the wines that we have not necessarily had the time to go through, see the reviews and the vintage report and etc. And reach out to our team or your contact for availability, which is again limited, and pricing. Do not hesitate to follow on social media. The team at Bouchard and at Fèvre as well puts regular updates on the conditions, the growing conditions during the harvest as well. So join us. I have a very specific question about Le Corton 2015. Somebody has a Jéroboam, so it's 3 liter, and he's asking when would be the best time to drink it? Is it in his lifetime?
The best time it's to invite me in US, and I will drink with you.
So right now is good.
Yes. No, 15. I love its vintage. 15. It's very round. It's a very soft tannin with a true expression of the terroir, and no, it's a beautiful, very beautiful vintage. Yes.
So another question about the vintage 17. So that vintage 17 was very lush and approachable upon release. How has the vintage evolved? How is it right now, in your opinion?
I think it's continued to evolve very well, and personally, I drink a lot of 17 because for me it's a perfect vintage to take an immediate pleasure today.
And how about 18? Is it? My understanding is that it's a vintage that is to put aside and keep a few years before enjoying. Is that correct?
Yes, 18, it's a very great vintage, but it's more, it's a hot vintage. And for me, 19 is very close of the style of 99, 09, and 18 will be the same profile. And if you take a very great pleasure with 18, you have to keep it for some years. Or if you would like to decant, to open it, because it's a very it's a strong vintage, very concentrate, with a lot of matter, and this vintage need a little more time, or decant it.
Okay, good.